lot of the product, right? Like getting on blockchain and be very successful. So I think Bitcoin is just one of the product to bring Bitcoin onto blockchain, and we will continue to do so.
And Mike, what are you seeing from the institutional side?
Well, I think it's still early. You know, we're actually really lucky that we finally have regulatory that's like enabling us to have these conversations. We were kind of just stuck in the how do you get to use it at all. There's been a lot of interest in the last 12 months around Bitcoin staking. Frankly, I think it's still actually pretty early for these. There's a number that have been, I think there's something like 91 different Bitcoin staking protocols that have come out in the last 12 or 15 months. Right now, it's still actually pretty early for getting a yield off of them. I think also we haven't really learned how to quantify exactly where the risk is. I think there's a lot of people that are coming and saying, hey, stake with us, and making it sound stronger than it is. But look, we'll get there, and that'll start to be something. On the DeFi side, it's also been difficult to have the conversation about how DeFi fits into institutional investors when you haven't even figured out how Bitcoin fits in for institutional investors. So now that we have that first hurdle done, we got great products, you know, from Hunter and his team, and you know, there's so many stocks on the market that can give you Bitcoin exposure as well. Now that conversation about how does this dovetail into DeFi gets to start happening. I think it's probably still 3 to 5 years before it's very formed. I don't think there's a huge low risk yield anywhere, but people are going to start figuring out what they like.
Awesome, and you know, we've got a limited time left, so I just want to kind of get some final thoughts from the panel. We'll go up and down the river. So we'll start with Hunter, and just what are you seeing? I guess here's the best question we could end with. Where do you think Bitcoin's going to be at the end of the year?
I've never been more optimistic about this space. I mean, everything that you could hope for, and you two have been in the space for a long time, Bitwise has been in the space for 7 years. So many things are going right. Now, the world does not happen in days and weeks. Some things take months, some things take quarters. But if there's one high-level thing I could say to everyone here, we're all part of a community. My gosh, it's happening, and you know, Bitcoin is becoming a mainstream asset, and I think you're going to see it everywhere. So I think higher.
You heard it here first. 1 million.
Look, I think unlocking the U.S. regulatory problem has a massive global effect. So we operate 7 regulated custodians around the planet. I talk to regulators all the time. They were all looking to the U.S. for leadership. At the end of the day, you know, regulators and legislators are just like everybody else, a bit of a school of fish. They don't want to stray too far away. The U.S. has the strongest, best capital markets in the world. That is not changing anytime soon. So they're all looking for the U.S. That's now happened. It's going to take, as Hunter said, it's not days and weeks. It's quarters and years. You know, it's money. It should move a little bit slower than social media and other types of technologies. But the unlock is happening right now, so it's really strong. I guess one word of caution, I don't mean to be negative, but you know, for everybody here, this is the Bitcoin crew. Many of you have been around for a long time. You know, we have to stay diligent, right? Like there still are, I think, real threats to Bitcoin. I'll throw it out. You know, I don't think quantum computing is a problem, you know, 6 months from now, but I get this question every month. So it's become a inhibitor for some to get their heads around Bitcoin, maybe the new FUD. It's our job to go and put these things to bed. Right, let's go fix it. Let's go continue to ratchet up the security, make sure that this thing doesn't have any faults, and it'll make it stronger against any type of legislative or regulatory, you know, difficulties which will otherwise be put on top of us.
Yes, I have joined the industry since 2012, you know, and one of the lessons I learned is Bitcoin is always going up, you know, so don't bet against Bitcoin, you know. So I think it's enormous to see, you know, U.S. is coming back, right, with the conference we have today. Like everybody is backing on U.S., building Bitcoin ecosystem. I think we will continue to hit all-time high, you know. So we basically have an all-time high like last week, right? I think the whole industry continue building. We're gonna see the price continue to going up. I have no doubt about that, and I think we just keep building.
Yeah, Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the things too is I hear a lot out there that people look at global M2, right? And back previously used to money printer go burr, things like that. So looking at global M2 and looking at the 90 to 105 day lag, kind of gives support that there is still monetary easing happening in the marketplace, and Bitcoin could be a great alternative in portfolios. So I think that's a great way to look at it. And as Hunter said, higher, but it's hard to pick a price. It's hard to value it against certain things. So, but having access and exposure is very important for investors, and we have some of the leading firms here. So I appreciate everyone's time. We'll do one more. I say Naka, you say Moto. Naka. That's right. All right. Thank you, Vegas. We really appreciate it. Thanks for your time, and have a great Bitcoin week.
Thank you so much, gents.
We're here at the Deep, and behind me you can see the replica of the new Shepard capsule. This mini spaceship takes humans to space. It's currently taken 58 humans, and currently it's going to take 6 more this week. We're going to try and go in and see how comfortable it is to go to space. Honestly, the price is not public yet, but I've heard it takes a couple Bitcoin to go up to space. I don't know. How many Bitcoin would you make to go to space? Do you think Katy Perry and Jeff Bezos would pay to go to space? Woo! This is very, very interesting. It's very warm in here, especially since the Deep is really cold. It has over 6 seats, so you can just lay there, enjoy the view from the whole world, literally, because you're going to be in outer space. Bueno, guys, I want to know, how much Bitcoin would you pay to go to space?
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine News Desk presented by Mara. We're live at Bitcoin 2025, the largest Bitcoin conference in the world, happening behind us. The price, $109,000. Of course, lots to come here on day one. Industry Day, alive and well and rolling. You're going to hear upcoming from Bo Hines, representatives of Cantor Fitzgerald. You're going to hear from David Sachs and Donald Trump Jr. But to break down all that we're about to see and all that we've seen, we've got special guests here. We've got Aaron Van Wertum, editor-in-chief at Bitcoin Magazine, and Alexander Lizet, CEO of Blockchain Group, a publicly traded Bitcoin treasury company out of France, currently one of the hottest stocks on the Paris Stock Exchange. So why don't we start there, Alex, with you. The Bitcoin treasury company model, this is a fairly new idea. Michael Saylor, of course, pioneering this years ago, but it was recently caught fire. Last year at this conference at Bitcoin 2024, there was maybe a handful of companies buying Bitcoin, putting it on their balance sheet, and using corporate debt to finance those purchases. Now it's wildfire. There's over 100 companies doing it. What happened?
Well, in the world today, the best performing companies are Bitcoin treasury companies. You can see Strategy over 5 years, 3,000%. Metaplanet over 1 year, 4,000%, even 5,000%. And now you have in Europe, Blockchain Group, already 2,000% in 6 months. We are the #1 performing stock out of all stocks traded in Paris. We have 100x our volumes. And we have the best performance over the last 6 months. And that's due to our focus to Bitcoin. We are Bitcoin maximalists. We fully focus on Bitcoin. We only do Bitcoin per share increase over time. And you have thousands of companies that have Bitcoin on the balance sheet. But overall, you have only 3 companies, in my view, that are fully laser eyes focused on the strategy playbook. Of course, Strategy, Metaplanet, and us.
Aaron, I want to go over you. There are risks and concerns. Some would say a bit of a cultural divide. We've got Alex here in his orange tie. We've got yourself in a polo representing maybe the older culture. Can you talk a little bit about what you might find uncomfortable about these Bitcoin treasury companies?
Well, I mean, there's 2 angles to take. Let me start with the first one. Okay, so these companies have been doing very well. Bitcoin itself has also been doing very well, right? And it has to do with each other. These companies are buying Bitcoin, price goes up, does well for the company. But what if the trend reverses? It's going to reverse at some point, presumably. Like, are we going to see a similar rate of decline as we've seen with previous Bitcoin bubbles? Is it just is your company gonna crash even faster than Bitcoin itself?
So there are key risks to take into account for Bitcoin treasury companies. The first one, of course, is the prolonged fall in Bitcoin price that can happen. And of course, as Bitcoin treasury companies represent more Bitcoin and Bitcoin leverage exposure for investors, well, that represents potentially even higher downside in a bear market.
Yeah. We're going to come back to this debate. We're throwing it now to the main stage. We'll be back with more content for Bitcoin 2025.
The strategic Bitcoin reserve, he's done that. We're well on our way of becoming the Bitcoin superpower of the world. If you look at his first digital assets EO, there were some landmarks in there that are important to consider. You know, we had the 30-day landmark, which required interagency actors to do an internal review or audit of everything they touched in the digital asset space. We had the 60-day landmark, which compelled the same actors to basically provide a list of recommendations, things that they could do independently to help us, welcome in the golden age for digital assets here in the US. And then now we're working diligently, as Tyler will describe, on our 180-day report, which will be more like a book to show what is the most robust framework we can possibly have to welcome innovation here in the United States, establish ourselves as that Bitcoin superpower, and really ensure that innovation is happening onshore, not going offshore.
Just to echo what Bo just said, I would say we're back. We were in a pretty dark place a couple years ago, and we're back reestablishing ourselves as the digital asset and Bitcoin leader in the world. And just as the secretary said the other day, we're going big on digital assets. So Bo wrapped up what we've been working on in terms of the 30 and 60-day landmarks for the first executive order. We have a big report that we're working on that's due in July 22nd. It's really a comprehensive first ever rendition of what the government has produced on what it thinks about digital assets across the government. So it's going to cover everything from tax to market structure to Bitcoin strategic reserve, everything you can think about.
So I think that's absolutely right. We definitely saw the sea change shift in the administration change across our portfolio of companies that we work with. I would also say one of the conversations that I often have with people within the Bitcoin community is they for a long time they felt like they had regulatory clarity with respect to Bitcoin, and I think for the most part that is true. But I still think that policy and regulatory clarity for the digital asset space more broadly is very important for the Bitcoin community as it will help kind of a rising tide lifts all boats. So we'll get into kind of specific elements of the policy framework right now. Why don't we start with stablecoin legislation? So Bo, it took a lot of debate and compromise to get the Genius Act to where it is today. That is the bill that came out or is coming in the Senate right now. How are you feeling about the status of that bill and its chances of passing?
Well, I'll take just one step back before we go there, because we really look at this in three phases, right? We've had the demolition phase, in which we've removed a lot of the red tape, or as we like to call it, blue tape, over-regulation that existed under the Biden regime, and more or less that lawfare that was created really through policy, through prosecution. We feel like we've done about 80 to 90% of the legwork there with the interagency actors, with phenomenal folks like Tyler over at Treasury, with the banking regulators, and so on. And now we're in the construction phase, right? And we're relying on our colleagues on Capitol Hill, who are doing an absolutely phenomenal job of working to get Genius home. And Genius is very important for the ecosystem and for Bitcoiners, right? Because what we're looking at here is updating our archaic payment rails that have existed for quite some time. You look at technology more generally. You look at the ways in which we communicate, how that's evolved. One thing that hasn't changed is the way in which we move money. And that's something that needs to be fixed. So we're looking at a system that will create much more expeditious transactions with instant settlement times. We're looking at a system that will provide a lot more transparency. And then we're looking at something that will secure US dollar global dominance for decades to come. But with all of that, the reason that Bitcoiners should really care about this, you're talking about a massive injection of capital into the digital assets ecosystem. That is great for Bitcoiners. It's great for Bitcoin. And we are extremely excited about what's to come as a result of Genius. And I'd be remiss not to thank Senator Haggerty for his leadership in this space, Tyler, who's worked diligently in this process, Luke Pettit in Senator Haggerty's office has done a fantastic job. And we've done this in a bipartisan way with Senator Gillibrand's office. In the last vote on cloture, I think we had